Good evening at the Capitol tonight. This is Marty Owings, and I'm with Representative John Lesch, who represents District 66B in St. Paul. And Representative Lesch, you've been pretty outspoken about recent measures that were passed off the House floor to restrict and penalize protesting.
That's
Can
right.
you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I could. They're meaningless efforts that would intimidate protesters. I mean, we already have laws in place at a misdemeanor level. They wanted to make it a gross misdemeanor only to intimidate protesters. There's nothing else that this would do because of all the protests that have occurred around Minnesota that irritated some folks like the authors of the bill and supporters of the bill. None of them have gotten over 90 days in jail. So I'm hard-pressed to decide what the motivation is behind offering bills like this other than to impinge on the free speech of people who irritate you and disagree with you. That's not what America's about.
Well, you're a lawyer, so tell me a little bit about the constitutionality of a threat against the First Amendment that curtails the peaceable right to assemble.
Right. Well, there are always reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions that courts have decided that governments can impose against the right of free speech. However, the court has also recognized the latent ability of certain measures to intimidate speech. And those are generally frowned upon. It is all situation specific, of course, but however, the other bill that was introduced was an idea to civilly sue protesters. That was packaged together in conjunction with these bills. The court would certainly find that unconstitutional as well. So they're traveling down a very precarious constitutional road in offering these bills.
What about Republican contentions that, listen, this can cause harm? What if an EMT needs to get by? What about the disruption to people's, ability to earn a living?
All right, then penalize that. If you can prove that there was impingement upon the ability to earn a living or that a vehicle couldn't get through, then you should have passed a bill that said that, but they didn't. They passed a bill that would penalize and intimidate everybody who wants to have their speech heard. I'd note that the march on the picture of the Edmund Pettus Bridge, Martin Luther King, the march from Selma to Montgomery, was blocking a highway. Yes. People are concerned about, well, what about my ability to get to work? The bus boycott that Rosa Parks created the boycott about, and Martin Luther King went down there, infringed on people's ability to get to work, okay, because they shut down the bus service. And there were some of the hallmarks of civil rights in this country, and the Republicans don't want any part of that.
What have you gleaned, if anything, from your understanding of their side of the issue? I mean, apart from you say they disagree with the free speech, I mean, what's their primary issue?
They're irritated. And who isn't? Okay, if you're driving down a road and you can't get through because the protest's there, you're irritated. Everybody, every single person who's trying to get through, I don't care how much you agree with the protesters or not, you're irritated about it. But that's the whole point of protest. Inconvenience is the heart of protest. And I think it's ironic that all these young unarmed black men are around the country are getting shot, but no one seems to care until they have to take a detour to get to the Mall of America. That's when people start to listen, and that's why free speech is so important.
What about, and we'll wrap up here shortly, but what about the idea that you're crossing a line from free speech to, say, civil disobedience, and those types of things are treated differently than First Amendment rights? Can you speak to that?
Well, that's also the right to freely assemble. So that is still the right to peacefully assemble, and civil disobedience, remember, that is still falls under the First Amendment. Okay, now at the same time, if you disobey, you are going to be arrested and put in jail. But remember that all of this is in context, and the penalties have to be commensurate with the crime. So deciding that you're going to punish someone by up to a year in jail is really draconian for someone who peacefully assembles in front of City Hall and doesn't leave the second they say on the bullhorn, "I've declared this to be an unlawful assembly, get out of here." Well, and if you don't right away because you can't get through the crowd, suddenly you spend a year in jail. I mean, that's just silly. So there needs to be some balance in this, and that bill didn't offer balance.
And what about the governor's thoughts? Do you know what he's thinking at this hour? Would he sign a measure? I mean, isn't this a poison pill for him?
I don't think it is. I think the governor has indicated he could potentially sign it, but at the same time, I think he wanted to wait to hear the debate on the floor of the House and the Senate. So hopefully we gave him some adequate reasons to really question the wisdom of this provision in the bill.
Thank you, Representative Lesch. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Owens.